You're listening to a special bonus feature of The Monologues, a one-on-one conversation with the creator of the Fizzy Fuzzy Chronicles. I'm Leslie Crane, and today I'm sitting down with the criminal mastermind behind the madness, writer, director, and voice of the narrator, Danny. Danny? That's your whole name? Danny what?
It is Leslie, thank you. I'll just go by Danny for the purposes of this interview.
Well, in that case, Danny, welcome to your own show.
Thanks, Leslie. It's nice to be interrogated without a lie detector strapped to my chest for once.
Well, let's start here. Why this story? Why Jack and Diane? And why now?
Well, honestly, because they've been squatting in my brain for almost 20 years. The first time I heard the album The Fizzy Fuzzy Big and Buzzy by The Refreshments, I started imagining this dusty little world full of bad decisions and worse alibis. Then enter Jack and Diane, two kids from the heartland. And well, they just never left. Eventually, I realized they weren't just part of this playlist in my head, they were this full-blown story. And this podcast was the perfect way to finally let them talk. I also really enjoyed Across the Universe and thought, hey, why can't I tell my story like that? Use the music as a compass and just go.
They talk a lot and none of them seem to agree on anything. Was that always the plan, this unreliable, overlapping narration?
Oh yeah, from the jump. I wanted it to feel like a documentary gone off the rails. You know, where every character thinks they're the hero, and the truth is somewhere buried between the edits. But plus, you know, let's be honest, chaotic people make the best storytellers.
Was there ever a version where Diane was the main character instead of Jack?
Plot twist. She was the main character the whole time. She just let Jack think he was leading. Diane, she's one of those people who walks away from an explosion without looking back because she lit the match.
You clearly love writing her. Is she based on anyone?
She's part of every girl I was warned about growing up, and part of every version of myself I never let loose. She's reckless with intention, and that's dangerous and, well, honestly, kind of addicting to write.
And Charlie, the third wheel, the conscience, the soft one, was he always meant to break away?
At first he was the comic relief, but then I realized he was the only one actually listening to his gut. He's what happens when loyalty goes too far until finally it doesn't. I think he's the one who evolves. You know, Jack and Diane, they just spiral.
Let's talk format. Why a podcast? Why not a novel or a film?
Because podcasts are the only medium where you can whisper a story directly into someone's brain. It's intimate. Creepy intimate. And I wanted this to feel like a late night call you weren't supposed to answer.
What's something about the making of this series that no one would guess?
That I almost made it a musical? No joke. There's a version of this where Jack sings about bad motel coffee and Diane has this whole number called Let's Go Down Together, but Let Me Drive. You're welcome for not doing that, by the way. Yet, I also recorded some of this under a blanket in my closet because acoustics are rude.
All right, let's pivot to tone now. How did you balance humor, heartbreak, and chaos without making it feel like a parody?
Oh, that's a great question, Leslie. And honestly, it's a tightrope. I kept thinking, if it's too funny, it won't hurt. And if it's too dark, it won't feel earned. So I let the characters contradict themselves. Jack can mourn the life he lost in one breath and make a dumbass joke the next. Because that's real. That's human. And that's how grief and guilt actually work.
And now we have this bonus episode, The Full Ride. What should new listeners know before diving into this all in one cut?
Oh, well, 1, buckle up. 2, this isn't your standard love story. It's messy, it's loud, it's unreliable, and that's what makes it real. Well, fake real. Like those reenactments on late night crime shows. You'll laugh, You'll flinch. You might even scream at your speaker once or twice. And that's part of the fun.
What moment in this series do you think hits the hardest?
Charlie's diner monologue, I think. He's out, he's finally out, but he's still looking over his shoulder. And that broke me when I wrote it, because even when you escape, some ghosts just ride shotgun.
Last two. First, which character would you grab a drink with, and which one would ruin the night?
I think I'd grab a drink with Detective Watts. No doubt he'd ordered something weird and bitter and pretended to medicinal. And I think Diane would definitely ruin it, but in a fabulous coat, and I'd probably let her.
Last question. What would Jack, Diane, and Charlie say if they were listening to this right now?
Well, I think Jack would roll his eyes and say something like, it's all taken out of context. Diane would ask if her voice sounded hot. And Charlie would probably just sigh and say, I told you this was a bad idea.
From stranger to reality media, this is the Fizzy Fuzzy Chronicles, the full ride, the complete unfiltered story told in one sitting for the very first time.
They said it was a love story. They just left out the body count, the bar tab, and they forgot to mention the getaway car. The monologues present the Fizzy Fuzzy Chronicles, a fictional true crime series inspired by Fizzy Fuzzy Big and Buzzy, the iconic cult album by The Refreshments. Jack Trumaine and Diane Parker were never meant to get back together, but they did. And in the span of 1 year, they went from reunion to robbery, dragging their friend Charlie along for the ride, whether he liked it or not. What you're about to hear is a reconstruction of events, interviews, recordings, rumors, half-truths, and very, very few good ideas. It's a story about love, sort of. It's a story about crime, definitely. And it's a reminder that sometimes the people you run from are the same ones you run toward. This is the Fizzy Fuzzy Chronicles. And yes, it gets worse from here. Jack Trumaine and Diane Parker weren't supposed to end up like this. A year ago, they were just two people reconnecting at a high school reunion, chasing the ghost of who they used to be. But that spark didn't light the way forward. It burned everything down. What followed was a toxic romance fueled by passion and bad decisions. Now this isn't a love story. It's a story of destruction. How far two people will go when they can't let go of each other, and how much they'll take down with them in the process. To understand the chaos, we have to start with Jack Trumaine. Jack wasn't always the guy who made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Back in high school, he was the golden boy, the overachiever with a quick wit and a plan to escape the suburbs. But somewhere along the way, those plans unraveled. He made it to college, but the weight of expectations and his own doubts pulled him under. He dropped out after his sophomore year and found himself back in his childhood bedroom, working dead-end jobs and telling himself he'd figure it out eventually. But, as so often happens, eventually never showed up. Hoping for a fresh start, all he could afford was a cheap studio apartment on the less than pristine side of town. The kind of place where the air smells faintly of regret and the neighbors are just voices through paper-thin walls. That's where he was when the reunion invite showed up in his mailbox, creased, coffee-stained, and full of promises of nostalgia. Jack went to the reunion, not for the memories, but for the hope of finding something, anything, to shake him loose from the rut he couldn't escape. And he found it. Or rather, she found him.
You ever had one of those moments where you just know, like deep down in your bones, you should bail, but you don't? Yeah, that was me. The first time I saw Diane at that reunion. I could have bolted. Hell, I should have. But nope. I stayed. It had been 10 years since I saw her. She looked at me like she knew something I didn't. Like she was daring me to run, but also promising something I couldn't resist. And that was it. She had me. No questions, no hesitation. I didn't even get the chance to think it through. Hook, line, sinker. It was just like we were back in high school. It wasn't just that she was this perfect mix of wild and beautiful, though. Well, she was, but it was more than that. At first, it was exhilarating. She was like this storm, a live wire of energy. Dangerous. Magnetic. Thought maybe that was the kind of chaos I needed. And then, and then she moved in. Fast. First, it was the toothbrush. Then her clothes, and suddenly it was like her entire life was all over my place. Every time I thought about saying something, about setting boundaries, she'd hit me with that smile of hers. That one that made me forget why I was mad in the first place. That smile, it could end a war. Or start one. But even with all of that, it wasn't the big things that got to me. It was the little shit. Like how she snored like a goddamn freight train, making it feel like the walls would shake so much the whole building might collapse from the noise. Or she couldn't cook to save her life. Burnt soup. Burnt eggs. Burnt everything. I mean, the fire alarm became background noise. Oh boy. And the worst part? Well, it wasn't the noise or the burnt meals. It was how she got inside my head. Every thought, every piece of creativity, every idea I had. It was just like she was this black hole sucking everything I had until I couldn't breathe. And I hated her for it. I did. Because every time I thought about walking away, she'd say just enough. Show just enough to make me believe it could be different, that we could be different. She was so full of these promises, big, shiny promises that felt like they could have been too good to be true. And like a goddamn fool, I fell for it every single time. I let her pull me in deeper. That I was choosing the chaos, choosing her. But looking back, I wasn't choosing anything. I was letting her tear me apart, bit by bit. So, yeah, I could have run 100 times over, but I didn't. when you're in the thick of it, when you're standing right in the center of the storm, you didn't even realize you're drowning. All you see is the calm in the middle. And Diane, she was all of it. The calm, the chaos, everything in between. And I never stood a chance.
Diane Parker was everything Jack thought he'd left behind. Wild, unpredictable, and alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. What came next was equal parts passion and destruction. But to Jack, it all started with one choice: to step out of his shadows and into hers. Diane had always been magnetic. Even as a teenager, she had a way of drawing people in, part charisma, part chaos. She could light up a room, but she could just as easily burn it to the ground. After high school, Diane hit the road, leaving behind a small town she swore she'd never return to. Her life became a string of adventures, odd jobs, late nights, and fleeting connections. She called it freedom. Most would call it running away. By the time she crossed paths with Jack again, Diane was still chasing the thrill of the unknown. But years of living moment to moment had left her restless, a little reckless, and desperate to do anything to feel alive. Diane doesn't see herself as a villain. In her mind, she's the hero of her own story. A woman who refuses to be tied down, even if it means leaving destruction in her wake. But as much as Diane would hate to admit it, Jack isn't just collateral damage. He's her anchor, her equal, her mirror. Their love is a wild, messy thing, dangerous, but impossible to let go of.
Oh, Jack. Always making everything sound like a tragedy, right? Poor, helpless Jack. Trapped in my world, swept away as if I walked in with a gun and said, "Hop on, sweetheart, we're going straight to hell." Give me a break. Jack wasn't some innocent victim. He was there, every single step of the way, making just as many bad decisions as I did. He wants to paint me as this seductive siren, luring him into the storm with a smile and a promise. Ha! Let's get real, okay? Jack came to me. The moment I walked into that reunion, he was all in. Sure, I smiled. Maybe I flirted a little. But let's not kid ourselves. He chased me. And for someone so trapped, he sure didn't mind when we were drinking whiskey and laughing like fools, or when we butchered karaoke at some dingy dive bar. And don't even get me started on this "she stole my inspiration" nonsense. Jack's always his own worst enemy. He's got the brilliance, but he's too scared to actually do something with it. It's easier to point at me and say, "She ruined me," than admit he's the one holding himself back. But here's the thing about Jack. He thrives on chaos. Even if I weren't around, he'd find it. I just happen to make it look a little more beautiful and exciting. Here's a real story for you. We're at this dive bar one night, and some guy thinks he can win me over with his gross cologne and slimy smile. I ignored him because honestly, who has the energy? But Jack? Oh no. Jack had to puff up his chest and play the hero. Told the guy to back off. And well, one punch later, Jack's lying on the floor, bleeding all over his favorite shirt. And what did he say? Lying there, looking up at the sky, twice his size. Doesn't change much, buddy. I still don't think much of your girlfriend. Come on. How could I not find that charming? Sure, he was a mess. But he was my mess. He says he would have done anything for me. Anything I wanted. So I simply reminded him that it'd take a little more money. And you know what? He didn't hesitate. Jack will tell you I pushed him too far. Dragged him into trouble. Always crossing the line. But the truth is, Jack never stopped me. Not once. Because as much as he loves to play the victim, Jack craved the ride, the thrill, the danger. He loved it. He'll tell you I ruined him, but honestly, I gave him exactly what he needed. Something real, something alive. Because before me, Jack was just another guy in a bar. All talk, no action. So sure, let him whine about the price, about what he lost. But the truth? Jack doesn't hate me. He hates himself for loving every damn second of it.
And so it began, a whirlwind romance fueled by chaos, bad decisions, and an undeniable pull neither Jack nor Diane could escape. Their high school reunion may have been the spark, but over the next year, the fire grew unchecked, consuming everything in its path. At first, it was electric. Late nights, whispered promises, and the kind of passion that makes the world feel smaller. Jack and Diane weren't just drawn to each other. They were addicted to the chaos they created together. Arguments that started with the slammed door often ended in smashed plates. Friends drifted away, unwilling to get caught in their gravity. And then there was this police report. Dated 6 months after the reunion, it reads like a warning sign no one wanted to acknowledge. Incident: domestic dispute. Location: Crescent Heights Complex, apartment 3B. Subjects: Jack Tremaine, 28, Diane Parker, 28. Report: neighbors reported yelling and sounds of breaking furniture. Responding officers noted visible injuries on Mr. Tremaine, but no formal complaint was filed. Miss Parker refused to press charges, stating, "It's not what it looks like. This is just how we are." Case closed. For Jack and Diane, it was never about winning or losing. It was about the storm. They thrived on the fight, on the making up, on the raw, messy connection that left them breathless. And they both knew the only thing that could end their story was the one thing neither of them could imagine: walking away. But Jack and Diane weren't alone in this chaos. There was one other person caught in the middle: Charlie McGregor, the reluctant friend who thought he could stay on the sidelines, only to find himself dragged into their world of chaos. Together, the three of them would turn a single night into the catalyst for everything that followed. What started as harmless, just drinks at a little place called Mekong, became something else entirely. If Jack is the spark and Diane the fire, then Charlie is the quiet, soft drizzle that tries to keep the flames under control and gets scorched in the process. Charlie was born into a family that moved like clockwork, but with no rhythm. He grew up learning to be resourceful out of sheer necessity. The kind of kid who could fix a leaky faucet with duct tape and determination, but who never quite learned how to fix himself. In high school, Charlie was a kid who laughed at Jack's jokes and quietly admired Diane from a distance. He didn't mind being the sidekick. Actually, If you ask him, he'd say that he thrived on it, being part of something bigger than himself, even if it meant tagging along on adventures he didn't fully understand. But high school doesn't last forever, and neither do the friendships it forges. While Jack and Diane drifted apart after graduation, Charlie stayed behind, patching up his life one odd job at a time. He wasn't unhappy, exactly, but he wasn't thriving either. He was just there, waiting for something to shake him loose. So when Jack called him out of the blue one day, saying he was back in town, Charlie didn't hesitate. Nostalgia is a powerful drug, and the promise of reconnecting with old friends was too tempting to resist. What Charlie didn't expect was Diane, or the whirlwind that would follow. And so here we have it, our players set: Jack, Diane, and Charlie. 3 lives, 3 perspectives, 1 night. This is where our story truly takes off. A dive bar, a coin flip, and a choice that none of them can take back. Welcome to Mekong.
It's kind of funny. Honestly, I didn't even want to go that night. Bars really aren't my idea of a good time. I mean, they're loud, people are everywhere, and the smell of cheap beer? Ugh. It's like my brain instantly decides to make me regret everything. But then Jack called. Said I had to come. Said Diane insisted, and well, when Diane insists, you don't really have a choice. You just go. I mean, I figured hang out for a few minutes, share in their jokes for a bit, and then leave. If need be, maybe I could, keep things from totally spiraling out of control, as they usually do. But, yeah, that was me being optimistic. So, I got there first, and let me tell you, Mekong wasn't exactly, fancy. The floors are always nasty and sticky, the lights were dim enough to make you question your life choices, and there was this old school style jukebox that probably thought it was still the 60s. It's the kind of place where you just don't ask about the food. Still can't believe they serve food there or who's eating it. So I grabbed a table in the corner, trying to look like I knew what I was doing, sipping on my Diet Coke like I had it all together, just waiting for them to show up. The bartender kept shooting me this look like she couldn't figure out why I was there by myself, sipping on a Diet Coke. Honestly, I couldn't either.
Mekong was Diane's idea, obviously. She had a thing for places like that. Grimy, loud, everyone trying way too hard to disappear. She called it having character. I called it probably covered in hepatitis. I wasn't in the mood for it that night. Writing had been a brick wall I kept slamming into. My car was on its last legs again, and the last thing I needed was another one of Diane's spontaneous adventures. But, of course, she wouldn't take no for an answer. Live a little, Jack, she says. So, there I was, shoved into a booth next to Charlie, who looked like he'd rather be at home with a bottle of aspirin, and Diane, who was already eyeballing the place like she was the queen of the joint.
I'll admit it, I dragged them to Mekong. Jack would have stayed home, glued to his computer, and Charlie, well, Charlie doesn't leave unless you light a fire under him. Mekong wasn't anything fancy, but it was alive. The kind of place where anything could happen. And that's exactly what I loved about it. It was everything I needed in that moment. I really wasn't even planning anything when we walked in. Not at first. But then I saw it. That trashy bartender Sheila sorting through a mountain of receipts with a fat-ass stack of cash just sitting there practically begging to be noticed. It was like an invitation. I slid up to the bar, pulled out my coin, and flashed her my best smile. Heads, I tell the truth, I said, flipping the coin. Tails, I lie. She gave me that look, like she wasn't sure whether to laugh or call the cops. Tails. I lied, told her I was just passing through looking for some fun. And the funniest thing, it wasn't even a total lie. I was looking for fun, just not the kind she imagined.
I should have just left when I had the chance. The moment Diane started whispering to Jack, I knew something was brewing. She had that look in her eye, half mischief, half, well, trouble. I tried asking Jack what was going on, but of course, he just shrugged. Fucking classic Jack. The guy never knew how to tell Diane no. And sure enough, before I could even talk myself out of it, she was at the bar, flipping a coin and chatting with the bartender like she was setting up some kind of game. I didn't catch what she said, but honestly, I didn't have to. Diane doesn't do small talk. She sets things up. And when she's the one pulling the strings, it's never good for anyone else.
Diane just said she wanted another drink. That's what she told me, anyway. Maybe I should have stopped her. Should have yelled at her and asked why she was flipping that stupid coin at the bartender, or why she suddenly had that look in her eyes. The one that made it seem like she'd just come up with the greatest idea ever. But I didn't. Because, well, part of me wanted to see what she'd do next. You see, Diane, she makes you curious. Makes you think that maybe, just maybe, this time, it'll all come together. Spoiler alert, it didn't.
It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. Just a little fun. A little thrill. I figured I'd grab as much cash as I could, buy a round for everyone, and no one would even care to notice. Simple, right? But then I look over and see that Jack had started fidgeting, like he was about to combust. Oh, and don't let him fool you. He was scared shitless. Charlie kept shooting me those wide-eyed looks like I was about to rob a bank. Their nerves? Yeah, they made me second-guess myself, and I got a little sloppy. Before I could even come up with some clever excuse, the bartender caught me, red-handed. And like a switch flipping, she was already on the phone, calling the cops. Over what? Nothing. Just a stupid little game I was playing, and now it was turning into a damn mess.
The sirens, they were fast, too fast. 1 minute we were just sitting there, trying to look normal, and the next, the whole place was lit up with red and blue. Diane grabs my arm and mutters something about getting out the back. I didn't argue. Jack? Yeah, he was frozen, like always. I pretty much had to drag him out the door. So we ran, down the alley, past the dumpsters, through the parking lot. My heart was pounding so loud, I could barely hear Diane yelling at us to move faster. I don't even know how we ended up by the car. All I know is 1 second I was running for my life, and the next I was shoved in the back seat, praying to whoever would listen that we wouldn't get caught.
Mekong wasn't a stranger to bad decisions, but the night Diane, Jack, and Charlie walked in, that wasn't just bad decisions. It was the start of something much worse. That night, the chaos erupted, and the following witness statements from Chuck, Sheila, and even Officer Cam Stevens, who just happened to be next door, pieced together the full picture. Witness statement: Chuck. Refused to give last name. Mekong regular. Recorded by Officer Ramirez, 1:34 a.m., following the incident.
Trouble. It's easy to spot if you've been around long enough. And let me tell you, that Diane chick walked in wearing it like a crown. She didn't just stroll in. She marched into the place, flipping a stupid coin, giving everyone this look like, who's she gonna mess with first? I was just trying to have a drink, forget about life, what you do at Mekong. Now, I've seen things here before, crazy things. People looking for a rush, trying to make a scene, and it never ends well for them. Gives me a chuckle, though, because it's like watching a movie, and I get to drink while doing it, without having to sneak booze into the theater. So that guy Jack, he followed her in, as usual, head down, just defeated. That other kid, Charlie, I think, he looked like he was about to spill his drink, just holding on to it. Nah, clearly they weren't here for the beer. Or the jukebox either, which, has all my favorite songs on it. I watched her, Diane, head up to the bar and start chatting with Sheila. Now, people don't chat with Sheila, they just go and order a drink. So I laughed about it a little and didn't think much of it at first. But then I saw that little thief reach over and grab the cash from the register. She didn't try to be sneaky, man. Sheila's good people. Always greets me with a smile. Always makes the drink strong. Well, she froze for a second, and the two of them just stopped and stared at each other like gunslingers. Then Diane gave her this smirk, this crazy smile, like she thought it was funny. When the siren started up, it was like someone set off a firecracker in the place, man. It was crazy. Diane tore out the back laughing like a supervillain. Jack was swearing under his breath, as usual. Poor Charlie looked like he was about to cry. He looked back, and his face said, sorry, everybody. They were out the door before anyone could even make sense of what happened. I enjoyed my drink that night.
Witness statement. Sheila Jones, bartender at Mekong, recorded by Officer Stevens, 1:45 a.m., following the incident.
Oh, I remember that girl, clear as day. Diane, right? Yeah, I clocked her the second she walked in, strutting like she owned the place, flipping that coin like she was deciding who to rob first. And Jack? That boy looked like a hostage who didn't realize he was part of a crime yet. And of course, Charlie, he had been sitting there all night, looking like a deer that just realized it wandered onto a racetrack. Now, I've seen my fair share of characters roll through Mekong. Guys who think a $6 tip makes them a high roller, drunks who swear they know the owner, and a guy last week who tried to barter a stolen TV for some whiskey. So Diane wasn't exactly shocking. At first, she was just chatty, talking about how she was just passing through, which in hindsight was probably the most honest thing she said all night. Told me she was looking for fun. And listen, I've been bartending long enough to know that fun can mean a lot of things, most of them ending with a call to the cops. But I figured, hey, she's just another traveler stopping by to test my patience and forget about life for a while. And then bam, next thing you know, she's leaning over the counter like she's checking the specials, and she goes and helps herself to a handful of cash from the register. Just like that, no hesitation, like she was picking up a bar snack. So I stared her right in the eye and said, "What do you think you're doing?" And you know what she did? Smiled. Like I just caught her in the middle of a magic trick. Like I was supposed to be impressed. Now, I may not be a genius, but I do know how numbers work, and those numbers weren't adding up. So I did what any sane person would do. I picked up the phone and called the cops. Didn't yell, didn't panic, just dialed while keeping eye contact like a mom about to tell a misbehaving kid's real parent what they just did. And Diane? She just stood there, grin still plastered on her pretty little face. Like this was all some kind of fun little oopsie. Meanwhile, Jack looked like he'd suddenly developed heartburn, and Charlie, he looked like he was going to pass out, which honestly made me feel a little bad for the guy, just a little. What that princess didn't know about me was, I don't mess around. You want to pull a stunt like that in my bar? You better be faster than my dialing finger. And Diane? Well, she sure thought she was.
Statement of Officer Cam Stevens, first on the scene.
I wasn't even officially on shift yet, just grabbing a quick lotto ticket and one of those frozen burritos at the gas station next to Mekong before clocking in. You ever had one of those? Tastes better on the box than in real life. But when you're pulling graveyard shifts, you don't exactly get to get picky. Sheila, the bartender at Macon, she's good people. Hard worker, tough. Always handles herself well, but around here, closing up late can be dicey, so whenever I can, I park across the street until she gets safely to her car. Nothing official, just looking out, you know? She appreciates it, though she never admit it. Anyway, that night, right as I was paying, I heard yelling, real yelling, not the usual drunken nonsense. We usually get 2 or 3 calls from a Congo week, but this felt different. By the time I got over there, Sheila was already on the phone, rattled as hell. She spotted me and pointed straight out that back door. Said 3 people had just robbed her and bolted. 2 guys, 1 blonde woman. Said the woman seemed to be running the show. I sprinted out the back. Alley was pitch black except for a few buzzing lights. Saw them right away. Diane was in the lead, hauling ass like she had done this before, focused and purposeful. The first guy behind her, Jack, was stumbling, tripping over bags, swearing loud enough I could hear it over my own breathing. The second guy, Charlie, looked downright terrified, lagging behind like he didn't know how he had got there and wasn't sure if he wanted to keep going. I flipped on the flashlight, shouted for them to stop, but they didn't even slow down. Diane cut left behind an auto shop, moved like she had been practicing escapes her whole life. Jack was clumsy, nearly ate the pavement, tripping over trash bags, but somehow he stayed on his feet. I kept thinking I could catch them. Damn, that alley was like an obstacle course, dumpsters, bottles everywhere. By the time I hit the street on the other end, they were piling into a car, tires already peeling out. The backup took forever. By the time they arrived, Jack, Diane, and Charlie were gone, just taillights disappearing into the night.
3 perspectives, 1 chaotic night. Chuck and Sheila got a front row seat to Diane's audacity and her friend's hesitation. And Officer Cam Stevens? He was the unlucky one who stumbled into their mess before his burrito even had a chance to thaw. Now, as the sirens faded into the distance and the city blurred into streaks of neon and shadow, the adrenaline that had driven their escape began to dissipate. Diane was behind the wheel, her laughter still echoing in the confined space of the car, a wild soundtrack to their recklessness. Charlie was in the back seat, wide-eyed and muttering fragments of disbelief, his grip on reality slipping further with every mile. But Jack sat in the passenger seat, silent, gripping the door handle as though it might anchor him to something solid. The chaos raging around him was muted now, replaced by a growing sense of unease. For the first time that night, Jack wasn't running from the cops or Diane's schemes. He was running from the truth he couldn't ignore. And in that fleeting moment of stillness, as the headlights painted fleeting patterns on the road ahead, Jack let himself reflect, not on the night's events, but on the choices that had led him here, to this car, to this life, to this unraveling. This was Jack's reckoning, the kind that comes when the noise dies down and all you're left with is your own thoughts.
I was in the passenger seat, white-knuckling the door handle like it was my lifeline. Diane was behind the wheel, driving like she had a personal vendetta against the road. And Charlie? Well, he was in the back seat, muttering to himself about sirens that weren't even there. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights flash past in a blur. My mind was wandering to places I probably shouldn't let it. Diane had this manic energy about her hands gripping the wheel like she was daring the car to push past its limits. She looked alive. And yes, beautiful. Also, it was like the chaos wasn't just part of her. It was like the air she breathed, like she couldn't exist without it. I felt empty, though. Not scared. Not angry. Just hollow. I thought about all those promises we'd made to each other back at the reunion, and everything felt easier. The drinks were flowing, and the years apart felt like a bad memory. "We'll go somewhere," she said. "We'll do something big." And I bought it. Hell, I believed her. But here we were, tearing down the highway with nothing to show for it except a dive bar that ended in cops, sirens, and a mess we couldn't undo. For the first time, I wondered if we were actually going anywhere at all. I wanted to ask her, but I didn't. Because, honestly, I didn't want to know. Not then. I wasn't ready to hear the answer, to face the truth that maybe, just maybe, this whole thing, her, me, all this chaos, all the promises, just, well, just it.
Jack's fleeting moment of reflection in the passenger seat was exactly that. Fleeting. Diane didn't slow down for introspection, and she sure as hell didn't stop for regret. For her, Mekong wasn't a mistake. It was momentum. And with Jack and Charlie caught in her gravitational pull, the spark she'd lit was already roaring into a wildfire. In the aftermath of the Mekong fiasco, the tension between Jack, Diane, and Charlie was undeniable. At least, according to the records we've obtained. Charlie went on later to describe it as the moment that changed everything. In his interview with Detective Watts, he mentioned feeling haunted by the sound of the sirens, replaying the night on a loop. Diane's coin flip, the stolen cash, and the way she laughed even as the blue and red lights closed in. He second-guessed every choice that brought him there, questioning whether he was a bystander or an accomplice. Jack's state of mind is harder to piece together, but the data we pulled from his phone paints a clearer picture. A series of unsent text drafts recovered by investigators tell the story better than he ever could. "I don't know how to stop this. She's already talking about something bigger." Or, "We should have left town last night. It's too late now." Or, "Charlie's scared. So am I." Although we don't know who these texts were meant for, we see Jack's psyche clearly. Diane was already moving forward. According to surveillance footage from a nearby gas station just hours after the incident, she was calm, almost relaxed, yet energized. Eyewitnesses said she was in control, gripping the wheel, giving orders, eyes already scanning the road like she was 2 steps ahead of everyone else. One source, a former co-worker, described her as having a heat-seeking missile mindset. Once she had a plan, there was no stopping her. This was the calm before the storm, though. A brief pause where all three sat in the wreckage of their choices. Jack and Diane brainstormed half-baked schemes for a bigger payday, talking in hushed tones in the front seat, while Charlie wrestled with the sick realization that the wheels were already in motion. What none of them realized, however, was that Mekong wasn't the end of their chaos. It was merely the sucker punch before the knockout blow. The following accounts were taken during separate interviews with Jack Tremaine and Diane Parker, conducted some time after the event. What you're about to hear is their recollection of the critical moments after Mekong, a crossroads where a reckless idea became something far more dangerous. Though they were questioned separately, their accounts overlap, revealing not just shared guilt, but an undeniable codependence. Listen closely, and you'll see how the story fractures and where the truth lies in between.
If you ask Jack, he'll tell you that I was the one always pushing. Like I was the mastermind, the one who couldn't sit still. Maybe that's true, but what he doesn't get, what none of you seem to get, is that I had to keep moving. If I didn't, we'd be stuck back in that crummy apartment, staring at bills we couldn't pay, waiting for the universe to hand us something. The universe? It never hands you anything. You have to take it. That night after Mekong, we were just driving. Nowhere special. I wasn't even thinking about cops or headlines. I was thinking about how nothing had changed. We'd run, but we hadn't moved. Jack was next to me, all quiet, acting like the weight of the world was on his damn shoulders. Kept staring out the window, all broody, like the answers were out there, somewhere in the streetlights. I was done waiting, done feeling small. I kept thinking, we can't keep doing this. We need something, anything to break the cycle.
Diane. Yeah, she was quiet that night. Unusually quiet, now that I think about it. She was drumming her fingers on the steering wheel, this nervous little rhythm she does when she's thinking up trouble. I didn't ask her what was on her mind. I didn't have to. I already knew. It was the same look she's always got right before things spun out. Thing is, I didn't stop her. I never stopped her. I just sat there, watching the road disappear under the headlights, telling myself we've had enough for one night. We could pull back from this, whatever it was we were doing. But the truth? Well, I guess I was waiting too. Waiting for her to say it out loud. Like I needed the excuse. Like I couldn't have it be my idea. 'Cause, as you know, she makes you want the chaos. Not me. Makes you believe you're better when you're right there in the middle of it with her. And back then, I still wanted to believe I was enough for her. Enough to keep the fire burning without burning us both down.
So I said it. I just said it. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I said, Jack, what if we did something outrageously big? What if we stopped waiting and made something happen, really made it happen? He didn't say anything at first. Just shook his head like he could shrug it off. But I saw his jaw clench. the way his fingers curled tighter around the door handle. People think I dragged him into everything, like I held his hand and forced him to cross every line with me. But he was already halfway there. He just needed the push. And I gave it to him.
She said something about doing something big, about taking control. God. I remember how she looked at me. Like it wasn't even a question. Like a dare. And I knew it was a terrible idea. I kept telling myself it was just talk. Just her being Diane. Reckless. Bored. Looking for the next thrill. But I think deep down, I knew it wasn't. Not this time.
He acts like I twisted his arm, like I forced him. But Jack wanted it. He needed it. The adrenaline, the rush, the feeling like we were in control for once instead of getting kicked around by life. He'll never admit it, but he was just as caught up in it as I was. Maybe more. And when I told him we had to stop waiting for the perfect moment, that we had to make our own luck, he didn't argue. He just sat there, staring straight ahead. Then he nodded. Just once. That's all it took.
I tell myself I didn't agree. Not really. But when she said it, when she dared me to think bigger, I nodded. God help me. I just nodded. And that was it. The moment it all shifted. I wasn't thinking about consequences. Wasn't thinking about what it'd mean for us or for Charlie or for anyone who'd get hurt along the way. I just wanted to be the guy she believed I could be. Maybe. Just maybe. I wanted the danger too.
Funny how Jack always says he didn't have a choice. But the thing about choices, we usually don't recognize them until they've wrecked something.
Because as much as he hated the chaos, he needed it.
Because as much as I hated the chaos, I needed it.
It was the only thing that made us feel alive.
Two voices, two versions of the same moment, and somewhere between their words lies the truth. A truth tangled in adrenaline, codependency, and a need neither of them could quite explain. And the decision they made that night? It wasn't just reckless dribble. It was the spark. During Charlie McGregor's final recorded interview with Detective Watts, we are able to reconstruct the events of that fatal evening. What you're about to hear is raw, unpolished. His hands shook the whole time. You can't hear that, but trust me, it matters. It reveals how a reckless idea spiraled into a night of chaos, violence, and irreversible damage. What began as a whispered suggestion on the road somewhere hours after Mekong would soon turn into a rampage. A series of robberies so absurd, so reckless, it left both lives and livelihoods in its wake. Because in that moment they were the, as we have learned, and what Jack and Diane called themselves, the Banditos.
They told me to be ready by 7 p.m. sharp. No questions, no explanations, just be ready. That was how it worked with them, Jack and Diane. They called, I came running. Not because I wanted to, but because saying no never felt like it was an option. It was like they had this pull. These two planets colliding. And I guess I was just some sort of moon caught in their orbit. I remember the drive. We were cruising down Harbor Boulevard, past those sketchy motels with the half-broken neon signs, ones where the letters flicker, you know? The kind where you can tell they rent by the hour just by looking at the people in the parking lot. Diane was driving. She always drove. Jack was shotgun, slouched low, not saying much, just watching the road like he was hoping it'd give him an answer or a stop sign. I was in the back seat, feeling the tension rise, knowing something was coming but too scared to ask. Then Diane said it, just like that, all casual. We could hit them all tonight, one by one, in and out. I laughed. Thought it was a joke, you know. But she wasn't laughing. She didn't even smile. Just kept her hands on the wheel, eyes straight ahead, like she'd already decided this is what was happening. "What do you think, Jack?" she asked, giving him that look she always gave when she wanted him to fold, like it was some sort of a test. Jack just sighed, deep, heavy, like he knew exactly where this was going. He said, "Diane, this is stupid." But he didn't say no. Jack never told her no.
What followed was reckless, unhinged, and, to some, downright surreal. Official reports describe the events of that night as a string of escalating crimes, though crime feels almost too clean a word for the chaos they unleashed. In the next hour, Jack and Diane, with Charlie in tow, targeted a series of motels and cash businesses along a 5-mile stretch of the city's busiest streets. 3 seriously injured, multiple storefronts vandalized, and yet, somehow, the chaos didn't start big. It started small, almost forgettable.
The first place was this rundown motel. The vacancy sign was half out, just blinking, vac Y, like the universe itself was giving us the green light to keep going. Diane parked, jumped out and told me to keep the car running. I didn't ask why, didn't argue, just moved up to the driver's seat, sat there, hands sweating all over the wheel. I saw them go inside. Jack hesitated at the door, looked back at me like he was waiting for me to stop him. Diane opened the door and 2 minutes. That's how long it took. 2 minutes and they were back. Jack looking pale like he was gonna throw up. Diane tossing this crumpled paper bag of cash onto my lap like it was a trophy. "One down," she said, grinning. She told me to go, so I drove off. And you know what's strange? Part of me felt relieved. Like, hey, okay, they got away with it. Now it's over and nobody got hurt. We can go home. But it didn't stop there. It never stops there.
Oh, it most certainly did not stop there. The spree escalated. 3 more motels, 2 corner stores, a cash loan business, each stop bolder, riskier, fueled not just by desperation, but adrenaline. And the dynamic, well, it shifted. The reports paint Diane as the instigator, but Jack, he wasn't merely just a passenger. As the night wore on, his hesitation wore off. Witnesses from one stop recall him smiling devilishly as they fled the scene. But it was Charlie who saw the cracks forming, and the turning point, according to him, was the third stop.
That was the one. We'd hit this sleazy little motel with a lobby straight out of a bad 80s movie. Diane walked in first, Jack right behind her, and I followed. And stupidly thought, okay, this'll be quick, nobody's gonna get hurt. But the guy behind the counter, he didn't play along. Big guy, mean, said the register was locked. That's when Diane pulled the gun. I didn't even know she had a gun. Jack's face went white, and for a second, I thought he was gonna bail, but he didn't. Instead, he reached into his jacket, pulled out this stupid fake Star Trek badge we'd picked up at a swap meet. And he goes dead serious. It's okay. We're with the feds. I swear to God. Captain Jean-Luc Picard, United Federation of Planets. And it worked. The guy just froze. Diane was laughing so hard, she nearly dropped the damn gun. I ran out of there with the cash, and Jack was behind me, laughing. He leaned back in the seat and said, and I quote, "Maybe the world really is full of stupid people." Diane got in the car probably 30 seconds later, smiling ear to ear like she just won the lottery. I glanced back at the motel. Didn't see the guy standing, but saw what looked like a body lying on the floor. I didn't ask what happened. It was then that I should have made them stop. I should have said something, but I didn't. Because in that moment, we weren't scared. We were untouchable. And that was the mistake.
As the spree escalated, so did their recklessness. What had begun as an adrenaline-fueled joyride was rapidly spiraling into something far more dangerous, more real. Charlie insists that there was a moment, one pivotal moment, irreversible moment, where the illusion shattered. The chaos they had been feeding on wasn't just thrilling anymore, it had turned deadly. This was the turning point. This was when the laughter stopped.
We just left the fifth stop, which turned out to be the last stop when it happened. Diane had just peeled out of the motel parking lot, the cash spilling out of her jacket onto the floor of the car. And she was still laughing. I remember it, because it was that shark kind of laugh. Too high, too loud, like she was trying to prove she wasn't scared. Like she was trying to stay in control. I don't even know how it escalated so fast. Jack was riding shotgun, quiet again. He always got quiet when the adrenaline wore off, like he was already starting to regret the whole thing, but couldn't figure out how to stop it. I wasn't even thinking about the money anymore. I was thinking about the flashing lights in the rear view, the sirens, the fact that I could feel the heat of the police closing in like they were pressing against my skin. Then it happened. The red light. Diane didn't slow down. Didn't even hesitate. She just blew through it, flooring the gas like she thought the speed would somehow erase the consequences. That's when I saw them. This family on the crosswalk. Mom, Dad, probably our age, and a kid. Little girl holding her dad's hand. I swear she had like a Mickey Mouse balloon or something. Goddamn Mickey. It's weird. The details you remember. We missed them by inches. Inches. Diane yanked the wheel, and the tires screamed so loud, I thought they'd rip clean off the rims. The car lurched hard, barely skimming past the family. The mother stumbled back, clutching the kid, and I swear I saw the father yelling, but it was like everything slowed down, like the noise just cut out. Then came the cop car. They weren't so lucky. The cruiser swerved to avoid them, and in doing so, it clipped the minivan on the opposite side of the street, head on. Glass exploded, metal crumpled. I remember the sound more than anything, that horrible, grinding crunch, the kind that makes your stomach flip, and just like that, everything froze. Diane wasn't laughing anymore. The grin she'd worn since this whole thing started, it was gone, vanished. Jack, God, his mouth was open like he was gonna say something. But nothing came out. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. For a second, it felt like we could all hear it. The wail of the child, the groaning of the crushed metal behind us. And the siren still there, but quieter somehow, muted, like the reality of it all had dulled the sound. I said it then. We've got to stop. I didn't yell, didn't beg, I just whispered it like a prayer. Jack nodded. I saw it, just his tiny, helpless nod, like he knew. He knew. We were past the point of no return. But Diane, she shook her head once, then twice, and she pressed down harder on the gas. I swear, the whole car shook with the force of it. She didn't say anything, didn't look at me, didn't look at Jack, just kept staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, eyes hard, like she thought if she kept driving fast enough, she could outrun what we'd just done. But we couldn't. Because that was the moment it all changed. No more stupid stunts, no more fake badges or motel cash grabs. We weren't just running anymore. We were being hunted.
That crash proved that this was no longer a reckless adventure. It was a crime scene. The family survived, the officers too. But the driver of the minivan, he wasn't so lucky. Died on impact. A father of two. His name was Arturo Castillo.
When I heard about the crash a few days later, the Castillo guy, I couldn't shake the feeling it was all connected. I pulled up the report and saw those names again. Jack, Diane, Charlie, the same three I chased down that alley behind McCollum. A father of two, Arturo Castillo, killed instantly. And I just kept thinking, what if I had caught them that night at Mekong? What if I hadn't been a step behind? Maybe that family wouldn't have to deal with losing their dad. They got away once, and someone died because of it. That's the kind of stuff you carry around. The what ifs pile up, and it's not fair to blame yourself, but it's harder not to. Jack and Diane probably thought they were just outrunning the cops, but you can't outrun consequences forever. Eventually the chaos catches up. It always does.
And while Diane pressed the accelerator, the sirens behind her grew louder. In the aftermath of the chaos they unleashed, the cracks in Jack and Diane's partnership weren't just showing, they were splitting wide open. The adrenaline that once fused them together had curdled into something heavier. Fear, regret, and the kind of guilt that lingers long after the sirens fade. Charlie, their reluctant accomplice, walked away without a scratch, but he wasn't unscathed. Physically, he was fine. Mentally, he was unraveling, caught between loyalty and the sobering realization that he might be in too deep. Part 4 picks up in the uneasy silence that follows the storm. where words stick in the throat and eye contact feels dangerous. Diane, ever the optimist, or maybe just the most convincing liar in the room, tries to smooth the edges. She speaks in half-truths and reassurances, not just for Jack and Charlie, but for herself. Because if she can keep talking, keep moving, keep spinning the plates, maybe the weight of it all won't crush her. But Jack is splintering. The thrill has worn off, leaving only questions he can't outrun. He's not just questioning the heist anymore, he's questioning Diane, the choices, himself. And for the first time, he's starting to wonder if getting out for good might be the only way to survive. The tension between them has never been sharper. Diane's promises, Jack's doubts, Charlie's silent panic. It's all balancing on the edge of a knife. And the question is, who will be the first to fall? This is the fallout.
I told them we were going to be okay, that no matter what came next, no matter how bad it looked, how messy it felt, we'd figure it out. Together. That was the whole point, right? Us. Two halves of the same wild, reckless whole. That's what I needed to believe. Because if we weren't together, then what the hell were we?
She said we were unstoppable, that nothing could break us. But all I could think about was how many times we'd already broken. Little fractures, fights, lies, regrets, stacking up like all the unpaid bills back at home. And every time we put ourselves back together, it felt incomplete. Like the next hit might be the one that finally shatters us.
I told Jack we'd leave our mark, carve our names into the mud where no one else could see, leave proof we were here, together, messy, wild, alive. Shoes in a tree, shadows chasing shadows across the pavement. It didn't matter how broken we felt, as long as we kept moving. I just needed him to feel it. Feel me. Feel us.
She'd spin these wild stories. Movie scenes, cowboy hats, starlit skies, minty fresh kisses at 2 a.m. when the world felt quiet, like it was holding its breath for us. I mean, what in the actual hell? But maybe that's why I stayed. I let her drive. Let her weave those stories around us, hoping they'd feel real enough. And maybe the wreckage we were leaving behind wouldn't matter.
I could feel him slipping. Jack, I mean. The way he started holding back, like he was trying to disappear into himself. Oh, and Charlie? Let's not forget Charlie. He was pale, trembling, like he wanted to melt into the floor of the car and vanish. I needed to pull them both back in. So I told them, what's good for me is good for you. What's bad for me, it's bad for you. So let's not make it bad. Let's just make it ours. Like if I said that out loud, it would be true.
But it was bad. It was always bad. I kept trying to picture what we'd been, what we could be, if we just stopped running long enough to catch our breath. But she was always there, pressing that damn hammer into my hand like it was my job to help her fix this. Come on, Jack. We'll pull the nails out together. We'll patch this up. It's us against the world, right? Like a fool, I kept taking it. I kept hoping that I wouldn't be the nail.
I could see it. The way Jack wouldn't meet my eyes when I said, "We'll get back up, we always do." He used to believe me. Used to hang on my words like they were gospel. But now, there was this distance, this pause between us that felt wider than the space in that car. But I couldn't let it go. I had to mean it. If we weren't unstoppable, then what was I even fighting for?
She looked at me with that damn smile. One that made my stomach twist. Made me forget why I was so angry. So tired. But this time, it felt different. It hit me all at once. She wasn't pulling me down. I was pulling myself down. Letting her hold the thread while I unraveled. One frayed piece at a time. Every word out of her mouth, every promise, every plea felt like that hammer delivering a blow. And guess what? I was the nail. Waiting to be driven in deeper.
I told them, cars break, people break, but we're not broken. We're just us. I needed them to believe that. Because if I could keep them believing, then maybe I wouldn't have to face the truth. Maybe I wouldn't have to admit how close to breaking I actually was.
She said we weren't broken. But all I could see were the cracks. Cracks in us. Cracks in me. And every time I tried to take a step back, to breathe, she'd pull me closer, whispering, "We'll do it all over again. We're unstoppable, Jack. We don't stop." I let her. Every single time.
So I said it. Let's go down together. Down together. Down together. Together. And I smiled, hoping, praying he'd smile back, hoping he'd see what I saw, that this wasn't the end, that we still had a fight left in us. It couldn't be the end. Not yet.
I nodded. Not because I believed her. Not because I thought we could fix any of this. But because I didn't know how to do anything else. Diane was driving. I was just holding on. Hoping the crash wouldn't kill us all.
So here's what we know. 3 people, 1 stolen car, somewhere far from town. The adrenaline was wearing off, the aftermath of a robbery gone terribly wrong. But the real damage, that was happening inside that car. Diane was still talking, filling the space with half-truths, the same lines she'd used before. But there was something different this time. She didn't sound convincing. Jack? Well, he wasn't convinced. He was starting to see it, really see it, the broken glass, the blood, but mostly he saw her, the way she kept talking, like words could fix this. Like if she spun the right story, everything would snap back into place. And in the past, it worked, but tonight, her words felt thin. And Diane knew it. That's why she wouldn't stop talking. Because if the words stopped, all that would be left was the truth. And the truth was, they weren't unstoppable. They weren't bending. They were breaking. As for our good friend Charlie, he knew it too. He was no longer just along for the ride. Not after what happened. Not after the sirens, the blood on his sleeve, the way Jack would no longer look him in the eyes. He kept hearing Diane's words. We're not broken. People break, but not us. But they were. And now, it's only a matter of time. Because that's how these stories go, isn't it? The promises start to sound like threats. The thrill fades. The lies get tangled in each other until you can't remember where the con started and where the truth ends. They were circling each other now. Diane doubling down, Jack pulling away, Charlie trying not to drown between them. And yet when Diane whispered, "Let's go down together," Jack just nodded. Not because he believed her, not because he thought it could still be saved, but because after everything, after all the wreckage, walking away felt harder than crashing. But the thing about going down together is, it only feels like you're together until you hit the ground.
You think they're being clever, don't you? People like Jack and Diane. They move fast, talk fast, make a lot of noise. They cause a shit ton of chaos. Enough to make everyone look the other way. But the thing about their chaos was, eventually I knew it would leave a pattern. You know, if you know where to look, you'll see it. Footprints. Breadcrumbs. And I've been looking a long time, baby.
And just like that, the chase began. Detective Robert Watts isn't one to quit. And as Charlie, Jack, and Diane sped toward the border, they're about to learn a hard truth. Running is easy. Hiding is impossible. Sometimes the road to ruin isn't a sudden drop. It's a slow, grinding descent. A steady erosion of choices made in desperation and faith misplaced in the wrong people. For Jack, Diane, and Charlie, that descent began long before they hit the border. But crossing into Mexico, that was the point of no return. Mexico, a name whispered like a promise, painted in their minds as a land of escape, of freedom, a place where the weight of their crimes couldn't follow. But promises like that are illusions, and illusions crumble when the light hits them. Reality? Reality doesn't care about borders. It was already closing in, one choice at a time. On the road south, the adrenaline of their spree was gone. In its place, silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Each mile carried the echoes of what they'd done. A family injured in a crash, hotel clerks bleeding on the floor, lives upended in their wake. They weren't just fugitives anymore. They were outlaws. The kind you read about in headlines and watch fall apart in the end. And yet, Diane clung to her fantasy. She saw herself as untouchable. spinning plans on the edge of madness. Jack, he was starting to see the truth behind her promises, the cracks in the foundation. And Charlie, well, Charlie was waking up to the reality that being a passenger doesn't mean you aren't complicit in the wreck. Now this part of Fizzy Fuzzy Chronicles takes us to the edge of the storm. Mexico looms ahead, shimmering like a mirage. But it's not salvation waiting for them, it's the beginning of the end. Their pasts are catching up, their illusions are breaking, and the choices they make now will determine everything. Dark times lie ahead for Jack, Diane, and Charlie. And as their story unfolds, one thing becomes clear. Some storms you can't outrun. This is the Fizzy Fuzzy Chronicles, Part 5. Buckle up, 'cause the storm is coming.
It was after midnight, and everything was still. That desert quiet, where the air feels heavy, and even the stars seemed smug, hanging up there like they're untouchable. Jack and Diane, they were passed out in the motel room. Their breathing, I guess, rough and boozy. I stood there, looking at them, and thought, this is it. If I'm gonna leave, it has to be now. You see, I couldn't do it anymore. The robberies, the running, the lies. It wasn't just dangerous. It was like I'd been hollowed out piece by piece. Funny thing is, way back in high school, Jack and I used to talk about hitting the road, chasing those sunsets and living wild. This wasn't freedom. It felt like a trap. And every mile we drove, the walls felt like they were closing in tighter. I kept telling myself I was just along for the ride, but by then I knew better. I wasn't just a passenger, I was part of the wreck. So I left. Didn't pack much, just my bag, some cash I'd stashed, and the clothes on my back. Made it look like maybe I'd gone for a smoke or a walk, just something casual. But every step out the door felt heavier, like the weight of everything I was leaving behind was trying to pull me back. And when I reached the road, the interstate was right there, a ribbon of black cutting through the desert, promising nothing and everything all at once. I thought about waking them up. I even took a step back toward the room. But what was I supposed to say? Hey guys, I'm done running for my life. Good luck. Jack would have rolled his eyes and lit a cigarette, and Diane, she would have stared me down like I'd stabbed her in the back. I didn't owe them an explanation, and they sure as hell didn't deserve one. So I turned around and started walking. It took hours for someone to stop and pick me up. A guy in an old Ford, cigarette hanging from his mouth like it was glued there. His dog in the back, looking at me like I was lunch. He didn't ask questions, I guess, and didn't want answers. Just gave me a nod and let me climb in. He dropped me off at a diner outside Tucson. I ordered coffee and a plate of the cheapest food they had. And I sat there, staring at the door every time it swung open, half expecting Jack and Diane to walk in and drag me back. But they didn't. And then, over the counter TV, I saw it. This detective, Watts, I think, standing in front of some reporter's mic, talking about Jack and Diane like they were public enemy number one. He called them reckless and dangerous, talked about the injuries they'd left behind, the lives they'd ruined. Oddly, he didn't mention me. But he did mention a reward, $10,000 for information resulting in their capture. I don't know what hit me harder, the bounty or the fact that he was right. You see, I'd spent so much time convincing myself I wasn't like them, that I wasn't part of the damage. But I was. And now they weren't just Jack and Diane. They were targets in a manhunt. But when the sun started to rise, I felt free. Scared out of my mind, sure, but free. And for the first time in years, I wasn't worried about what came next or how much trouble was waiting for me down the line. I didn't know where I was going, and that was okay. But even now, I can't forget the way their faces looked on that screen, plastered under the word wanted. The thing about the interstate is, it doesn't care where you've been. It doesn't care where you're going. It's just there, stretching out ahead of you, daring you to keep moving. And for the first time, I took it up on that dare.
Charlie left through the back door of that motel like a ghost. But ghosts don't leave trails. And Charlie? He left one right to their doorstep. You see, Jack and Diane weren't just running from their crimes. They were running from the man who refused to let them go. Detective Robert Bobby Watts was the kind of cop you didn't see much anymore. A throwback, a relic, a man who ground his way through cases with grit and instinct instead of technology and shortcuts. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't a hero. But he knew how to stay on a case like a dog with a bone. For Watts, this wasn't just about justice, it was personal. His career had been built on almosts. Almost cracked the big case, almost got the promotion, almost made the headlines. But every time he got close, someone else swooped in to steal the glory. And now, at 53, Watts wasn't chasing legacy anymore. He was chasing redemption. The case of Jack and Diane wasn't supposed to matter. At first, it was just another robbery, another messy lover's spat turned criminal. But then, the chaos started spreading. The dive bar, a bloody hotel clerk, a string of wreckage that left people hurt and Watts looking like he'd lost control. And to make it worse, they made him look stupid, slipping through his fingers right under his nose. But for Watts, this wasn't about the embarrassment or the department's reputation. It was about something deeper. The way Jack and Diane flaunted their recklessness in a world where consequences should have pinned them down. They weren't just breaking the law, they were spitting in its face. And Watts wasn't gonna let that slide. So while Jack and Diane chased their mirage of freedom, Watts chased them. Every lead, every witness, every sleepless night spent piecing together their trail. To him, they weren't just criminals, they were a symbol of every time someone got away. And this time, Watts wasn't gonna let that happen. Jack and Diane were running out of time, but so was Watts. He needed this win. Not for the press, not for the department, for himself. And when the dust finally settled, he wanted to be the one standing, the one who brought them in, the one who proved, once and for all, that he wasn't just the guy who almost got the job done. This is Detective Watts, the man who refuses to quit, even when the world tells him he probably should.
Did they get away? Yeah. Jack and Diane slipped through. It happens. But don't mistake that for them winning, or a loss on my part. From the start, they weren't typical. Most criminals make mistakes, trip over their own mess. Jack and Diane, they thrived in it. Sloppy enough to leave chaos behind, but just smart enough to keep out of reach. They weren't masterminds, but they were slippery, and slippery is worse. Slippery leaves people bleeding and lives ruined. What started as a bar robbery spiraled into something else. Clerks left in pools of their own blood. A family in the hospital after a high-speed chase. They didn't just break the law. They burned every rule in the book. In the media, they ate it up. Modern-day Bonnie and Clyde. Heroes for a broken world, right? Yeah, no. They weren't heroes. They were selfish, reckless, and dangerous. And no, we weren't ready. Mekong was a mess. The crash sites on the interstate were worse, and my team was chasing their own tails while Jack and Diane had already vanished into the horizon. Okay. Could I have handled it differently? Maybe. Called in the feds sooner. Locked down the border faster. But when you're in the thick of it, you don't have the luxury of hindsight. You make decisions, you follow the trail, and sometimes you lose. But nobody runs forever. See, what gets me isn't just that they ran. It's how they ran. Like the rules didn't apply. Like the people they hurt were collateral damage in some grand adventure. That's what I can't let go of. They didn't just break laws. They spat in the face of accountability. But every mile they drove, every town they passed, was just another thread in the web they were weaving around themselves. They didn't know it yet, but their luck was already running out. Jack and Diane weren't ghosts. They were flesh and blood. And people leave trails. Mistakes. When they do, I'll be there. Why didn't I follow them into Mexico? Simple. Jurisdiction. You don't cross that line without clearance unless you're trying to make an international mess. But just because I couldn't cross the border doesn't mean I was done. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that patience pays off. And then there was Charlie. Found him in a diner outside near the border, looking like he hadn't slept in days. The poor bastard was sitting there, muttering into his coffee like it could save him. I almost didn't recognize him. Skinny guy, nervous energy, hands shaking. But when he looked up and saw me, yeah, that was the moment his luck ran out. The funny thing about luck, there's a way of turning when you least expect it. Mine just did. Jack and Diane thought they were untouchable, but the road ends somewhere. And thanks to Charlie, I now know where.
While Detective Watts pieced together their trail, Jack and Diane settled into a small village on the other side of the border until what they thought was freedom. Mexico, their mirage. A place where the weight of their crimes couldn't touch them. But mirages are only tricks of light. Reality doesn't change just because you've traded one side of the line for the other. The small, sun-bleached town they landed in should have been a haven, a reset. Quiet streets, cheap motels, 1,000 ways to disappear. But Jack and Diane didn't find salvation. They found themselves trapped in the heat, the silence, and the cracks in their bond. For Diane, Mexico was supposed to be the start of something bigger. For Jack, it was a suffocating reminder that no matter how far they ran, they couldn't escape the mess they made. Or each other. And the longer they stayed, the clearer it became. Their partnership, once fueled by passion and adrenaline, was starting to fray under the weight of their choices. This wasn't a new beginning. It was a purgatory. A place where resentments burned as hot as the sun and desperation hung thick in the air. For Jack and Diane, it wasn't the escape they hoped for. It was the beginning of the end.
Crossing the border should have been a clean break. A new start. But the second we stepped into Mexico, I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. The air felt heavy. Streets were too quiet. Like even this place didn't want us here. Diane kept telling me, "We made it, Jack. We're safe." We weren't. We were just farther away from the wreckage and the people we left behind. Charlie? Hell, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he was spiraling before we even crossed the border. I was like watching a dam crack. You just knew it was going to burst, just not when. He thought I was asleep, and I should have said something. Done something. But instead, I just let him walk away. Which might have been my way of saying sorry.
Jack thought too much. He was always staring out the window or wandering the streets like he'd find some magic answer out there. Meanwhile, I stayed in the cantina down the road. The beer was warm, the company forgettable, and nobody asked questions. That was enough for me. But even as I sat there trying to figure out our next move, I couldn't stop thinking about Charlie. I hated admitting it, but I was worried about him. He'd been unraveling for a while, muttering about guilt, about how this wasn't what he signed up for. I kept telling myself he'd pull it together, but what if he didn't? What if he did something stupid?
I'd walk past the cantina sometimes and see Diane through the window, laughing with strangers like none of this was real. Meanwhile, I was out there trying to keep my head above water. One day, I ended up in some bar across town, and there was this girl. She wasn't Diane, and that was the whole point. I told myself I could forget everything for a while. Diane, Charlie, the mess we'd made. But forgetting doesn't come easy. A few drinks later, I was stumbling back to the motel, reeking of shame and more bad decisions. Diane didn't say anything when I walked in. She didn't have to. That almost made it worse.
Jack thought I didn't notice, but I saw it all. The stumbles, the guilt etched on his face, the way he avoided my eyes. I didn't call him out because I didn't know what to say. Jack always ran from his problems, from me, from himself. And now we left Charlie behind, or he left us. Either way, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if Jack wasn't the only one running? What if Charlie ran somewhere else, straight to the cops? He wouldn't do that, would he? No, I had to believe he wouldn't. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were just an inch away from the edge.
Every time I walked into that motel room, it felt smaller. Like the air was running out. Diane would be sitting on the edge of the bed, staring out the window like she was waiting for something. Or someone. To save us. I guess I knew she was thinking about Charlie, even if she didn't say it. I was too. I didn't want to believe he'd give us up, but the thought was always there, gnawing at the back of my mind.
Jack wasn't saying much, but I could see it in his face. He was thinking about Charlie just like I was. The kid never had the stomach for this kind of thing. I kept telling myself he'd stay quiet, loyal, but I wasn't so sure anymore. I didn't know how far guilt could push him, and the idea of him sitting in some diner spilling everything to a cop, that used to keep me up at night. I needed to believe Charlie would keep it together, but the truth? I didn't even know if we could.
Mexico wasn't freedom after all. It wasn't salvation. It felt like a waiting room. And every minute we spent here, I felt the walls closing in. Diane kept saying we'd figure it out, that everything would be fine. But I didn't believe her anymore.
I could feel Jack pulling away, even if he didn't say it out loud. And as much as I hated it, I couldn't blame him. None of us were built to last like this. Not here. I just prayed to whatever was listening that Charlie would keep quiet. For his sake, not ours.
I'd like to say I'm patient by nature, but the truth? This case had been gnawing at me. Jack and Diane weren't just another pair of criminals. They were a damn puzzle. One piece missing here, another bent there, and every time I got close to solving it, they slipped away. Mexico was their big move, their escape hatch. But it wasn't a getaway. It was a gamble. And gamblers like them, they never know when to quit. Charlie. Poor kid. He didn't belong in their world, and I think he knew it. What I've learned over the years about guilt is, it eats away at you. It chews on the edges until there's nothing left. So when I found Charlie in that diner, I knew his luck had run out. Hell, maybe even mine had turned for once. He didn't say much at first. But when he started talking, the floodgates opened. One word, one detail, one mistake. It was all I needed.
While Detective Watts waited for the storm to break, Jack and Diane were already standing in the eye of it. Mexico wasn't the haven they hoped for. It was the beginning of their undoing. The choices they made, the cracks in their bond, and the weight of their guilt were already pushing them toward the inevitable. Charlie, he was just the first domino to fall. His guilt, his fear, his desperate need to escape, it all led him straight into Watts's open arms. So with Charlie's betrayal, the threads Jack and Diane had been holding onto began to unravel. The world they built, fragile and reckless, was collapsing, and there was no stopping it now. When our story first began, we didn't quite know exactly what genre it was. Was it a cautionary tale, a love story, a crime drama? Turns out in truth, it's all of those things and none of them at the same time. That's what makes it the Fizzy Fuzzy Chronicles, a mess of contradiction, much like the lives it's about. The name, of course, comes from an album, a collection of songs that feel like cheap whiskey on a hot night, chaotic, bittersweet, a little reckless, and entirely unforgettable. Songs about longing, heartbreak, and the kind of mistakes you only laugh about years later, if you survive them. By now, you know the story of Jack and Diane, the whirlwind romance, the impulsive crimes, the toxic love that burned like wildfire, leaving nothing but wreckage in its wake. You've met Charlie, the reluctant accomplice who thought he could keep them from self-destructing, only to end up caught in their storm. And you've walked in the shoes of Detective Watts, the world-weary man chasing them, not just for justice, but for the redemption he's been chasing his whole life. This chapter is the reckoning. The moment where all the lies, adrenaline, and broken promises come to a head. A storm has been building since that night at Mekong, growing darker and more violent with each passing choice. Welcome to part 6. The reckoning is at hand.
When we got the call, it felt like the 100th lead that was going nowhere. But something about this one felt different. Charlie McGregor wasn't just broken. He was shattered, spilling over with guilt and regret, each word dragging us closer to Jack and Diane. By the time he emptied his coffee cup, I had an address and a cantina with their names all over it. These weren't ghosts anymore. They were flesh and blood, and I was going to be the one to catch them.
The town set heavy under the Mexican sun, its streets a scrambled heap of dirt and cracked asphalt. The cantina wasn't much to look at either, a sagging building, lost in time, with peeling paint and a rusted sign that was hanging on by a single chain link and hope. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of tequila and regret. The kind of place where time feels like it's standing still, even as the world outside is spinning out of control. And there they were, Jack and Diane, two broken halves of the same jagged coin, sitting at opposite ends of a storm of their own creation.
They said I'd be a hero. Just tell us where they are, Charlie. Just say the words and this is all over. But it wasn't that simple, was it? It's never that simple. I pictured them in my head. Jack staring out the window, lost in his own regrets. Diane flashing that killer smile that always meant trouble was coming. And I was the idiot stuck between them, always saying yes when I should have said no. When I finally gave up the location, it felt like handing over the last piece of myself I hadn't already ruined. And the worst part, I knew I'd never get it back.
Watts and his team rolled in with the sun dipping low, bleeding orange across the horizon and stretching shadows down the dirt road like ghostly fingers pointing toward the cantina. The door swung open with a screech loud enough to kill conversation. Drinks froze midair, eyes widened, the room suspended in startled silence. Jack saw them first. He stiffened, eyes flaring wide, body coiling like a startled animal. Diane didn't react at all. She sat calmly at the bar, fingers casually wrapped around her chipped glass, eyes fixed straight ahead, as if daring fate to make a move.
When Charlie finally cracked and gave us their location, I figured it would be straightforward. But nothing with Jack and Diane ever was. We rolled up on that cantina as the sun was setting. My team surrounded the place, and I led the charge through the front door. Thought we had them cornered. But Jack, damn kid, was quicker than I expected. He bolted for the back the second he saw me, sending his chair clattering backward. Bottles shattered against the floor as he bulldozed his way toward the back door. Patrons shouted, scattering out of his path. Chaos erupted behind him as he crashed through the exit, leaving splinters of wood hanging from the hinges.
Detective Watts shouted commands. Officers sprinted after Jack, weapons drawn. Watts approached Diane, who sat alone at the bar, utterly unfazed, spinning her now empty glass slowly on its rim.
I knew it was coming. Charlie disappearing was the first sign. Jack had been nervous all day, pacing, checking windows. Me? I knew running again wouldn't change a damn thing. When that door blasted open, I didn't even have to turn. I could feel Watts standing there, feeling all proud of himself. But he had no clue. He wasn't catching us. We'd been caught for a long time. Caught up in each other, caught in a mess we made ourselves. So I sipped my drink and let Jack run if he wanted. It didn't matter.
Outside, Jack sprinted through the alley, heart slamming against his ribs. He kicked over crates, bottles exploding against the concrete, glass spraying like fireworks. Two cops surged after him, boots thundering through the dirt. Jack rounded the corner hard, slipping, crashing painfully against the wall, but barely breaking stride. His breath came ragged as adrenaline flooded his veins.
I knew the second Watts walked in, we were screwed. Diane, she was calm, like always. Like the world could collapse around her and she'd just order another round. But me, I had to run. I had to at least try. It wasn't even about getting away, it was about doing something. Anything, other than waiting for the inevitable. So I bolted. Tables, bottles, none of it mattered. I ran like hell, praying the back door would hold just long enough to get through. When it burst open, I was halfway down the alley before I even realized it. But they were faster than I thought. I hit the corner, skidding, thinking I was clear, but suddenly I heard footsteps behind me. Way too close.
Back inside, Watts loomed over Diane, cuffs dangling from his fingers. Diane still hadn't moved, her chipped glass slowly spinning between her fingers.
She didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just sat there with this smirk, as if we'd walk into her trap instead of the other way around. I asked her, "Where's Jack going, Diane? You know he's not gonna get far." She just shrugged, didn't say a word, like she didn't care. Maybe she didn't.
Outside, the chase came to a frantic head. Jack scrambled desperately up a chain link fence, scraping his palms raw as he almost made it over. An officer grabbed him by the ankles and yanked him hard, where he landed on the dirt floor with a thud. He heard the other officers shouting. More of them, growing closer.
We caught Jack in the alley, his face pressed into the dirt, kicking and cursing until the fight drained out of him.
Outside, Jack's breath came in ragged gasps as the cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. His face streaked with dirt and sweat. Inside, Diane now sat alone at the bar. The fading light shone through the cantina's warped windows, painting her in fractured shadows. A puzzle that no one could ever quite piece together.
When they dragged me back, Diane just sat there, spinning her damn glass like this was all some kind of joke. I wanted to yell at her, to ask her why she didn't run, why she didn't try. But I didn't. Because deep down, I guess I already knew the answer. Go ahead, Jack, she would have said. Her voice would have been low and steady. Run. Leave me behind like you always do. But all she did do was smile at me. And that hit me harder than anything Watts could have thrown at me.
When we dragged him back inside, Diane didn't even blink. She just leaned back in her chair, looked me dead in the eye, and said,
Took you long enough. That's all I told Watts at first. And when he looked at me, all triumphant and righteous, I just laughed. And then I told him, "You think you're the one who caught us? Please. We've been caught for years." And it's true, isn't it? Jack and I, we were the wreckage long before the crash. Watts just happened to be the guy sweeping up the shattered glass of our lives.
She laughed when she said it, like it was just a punchline. But if you listen closely, there's no smile in her voice. So by the time the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack and Diane were in the back of separate squad cars, their faces lit by the red and blue pulse of the sirens. The town exhaled, its quiet returning like a sigh of relief. But for Watts, the chase wasn't over. It was just merely another chapter closed.
People keep asking me if I feel vindicated, if I finally feel like I caught my big break. Jack and Diane behind bars, headline news. But the truth is, there's no victory here. Not really. I've been chasing people like them my whole career. I thought catching Jack and Diane would finally quiet that voice in my head. You know, the one always muttering close but no cigar. Turns out, it just got louder. Justice doesn't erase damage. It doesn't fix broken families, shattered lives, or bring anyone back. It doesn't rewrite history. But at least they're done running.
We caught up with Charlie McGregor and Sheila Jones to see if they had any words they wanted to share as a final closure to this saga. This is what they told us.
I heard someone once say that guilt is just grief you haven't buried yet. I thought leaving Jack and Diane behind would fix me, like distance was enough to outrun everything we'd done. But distance doesn't erase a damn thing. It just gives you space to see clearer how far you've fallen. I went home, tried to start fresh, tried to tinker my way out of feeling this emptiness. But there were some things you can't MacGyver your way out of. Like being the guy who said yes too many times, who couldn't stand up to his friends until it was too late. So now I just carry it. The silence, the weight of it all. Every time I see an empty interstate, I think of them. And I wonder how many miles it takes before you finally feel clean.
I helped reopen Mekong about a week after everything went down. Could have quit, could have packed it up and moved back home, but that's not who I am. You don't run just because the world knocks you down. Some nights, I see Officer Stevens in his patrol car across the way, and I wonder if he is doing the same thing I am. Watching the door, half expecting another Diane to walk through it, flipping a coin looking for trouble. But you know what? I'll be ready. Because if Jack and Diane taught me anything, it's that trouble finds everyone eventually. The difference is whether you let it take you down with it. And I don't plan on letting anything take me down.
As for Jack and Diane, the storm didn't end with their capture. It just shifted. Because some people don't get happy endings. They get endings that linger like smoke in the air long after the fire has been put out. And what they leave behind are echoes. Echoes of a storm that rolled through, tore apart, and left the world just a little quieter in its wake. These are their words, recorded from their last interview with us in 2 separate prisons, miles and miles apart.
I feel the thunder from the storm down in Mexico, like it's still chasing me, rolling over the horizon, ready to catch me if I stop moving. It's funny, isn't it? I've been sitting in this cell for a while now, and I still feel like I'm running. I've thought about her, of course, Diane. There's no getting around that. She's everywhere, in my head, and every crack of lightning, every gust of wind. People tell me I should let her go. That holding on to her is what keeps me stuck here. Maybe even what brought me here in the first place. They're probably right, but it doesn't matter. She's part of me, like my own shadow. And the truth is, even now, even after everything, if she walked in here and told me to get ready, I'd go. Just like that. What does that make me? A fool? Probably. But that's the thing about storms you love to hate. You don't forget them. not the way they feel, not the way they change you. I'd like to say I learned something from all this, but I'm not sure I have. All I know is that some people get out of the storm, and some of us stay in it, waiting for the next crack of thunder. And, well, maybe that's where I belong.
Jack's voice holds on to the past like it's the only thing left of him. Diane's voice, though, hers is something different. It carries the weight of someone who's finally learned to let go.
I see the lightning from the storm down in Mexico sometimes, but only in dreams. And even then, it's distant, like it's not mine anymore. Prison strips everything away, you know? The noise, the chaos, the excuses. It leaves you with nothing but yourself. And at first, that's unbearable. But then slowly you start to see who you really are beneath all the layers. I've been using my time here, studying, reading, and learning about the world in ways I never bothered to before. I even found myself mentoring some of the younger girls here, as if I'm some sort of wise sage or something. I didn't think I had it in me. But here I am, proving myself wrong every day. I'm even studying for a college degree. Maybe even something in the legal field. I don't think about Jack much. And when I do, it's like remembering a ghost, something that used to be real but isn't anymore. If I ever saw him again, I don't know what I'd say. Maybe nothing. Some things are better left in the past where they belong. But I'll tell you this. I've stopped running. For the first time in my life, I'm standing still. And it doesn't scare me the way it used to, or the way I thought it would. There's a kind of peace in knowing you don't need to chase anything anymore. The storm was all I knew for so long. But it's over now. The air's clear. And I can finally see the horizon. And it's enough.
Some stories end in fire, others in silence. Jack and Diane, they gave us both. Two people who collided like lightning and thunder, leaving a path of chaos in their wake. Their story wasn't about heroes or villains, love or hate. It was about choices. Jack sits in his cell staring at the storm that still rages in his mind, unable to let go of what he lost. Or maybe just unwilling to face who he became. Diane found a way out of the storm. Not because it was handed to her, but because she fought her way through the wreckage, step by step. And maybe that's the lesson here. Storms like Jack and Diane's don't just happen. They're built choice by choice, moment by moment. Every decision, every compromise, every time they said, just one more, they fed the storm until it was too big to contain. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Which part of their story will you carry with you? Will it be Jack, clinging to the thrill, trapped by the fire he helped ignite? Or will it be Diane, stepping out of the storm and into the unknown, ready to build something better? The choice, as it has always been, is yours. This has been the Fizzy Fuzzy Chronicles. Thank you for walking through the storm with us. May you find the calm on the other side, and may you use what you've heard here to write a better ending for yourself. This has been a Stranger to Reality media production. Starring Christian Ledley as Jack Tremaine, Michelle Miller as Diane Parker, Darcy Thompson as Charlie McGregor, P.J. Marino as Detective Robert Watts, Amy Connolly as Sheila Jones, Chris Aubrey as Officer Cam Stevens, Jose Sardui as Chuck, Tori King as Leslie Crane, Danny Juare as the narrator. All characters, events, and locations portrayed are products of the author's imagination or used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead or real-life events is purely coincidental. And if it feels familiar, well, sometimes truth and fiction bleed together on the same stretch of highway. Thanks for riding shotgun through this tale of love, lies, and low-flying consequences. The storm has passed, but the wreckage remains. This has been the Fizzy Fuzzy Chronicles.